How is Miami an undefeated football team? Oh yeah, I know how.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. The craziness continues. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Miami and Cal finished at 2:30 a.m. local time in Coral Gables. Worth it for the Canes fans who braved the new ACC schedules. Miami's 6-0. I don't know why. I don't know how, but they are. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. And it's brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Literally too many instant reaction shows or takes for just one show. So we're doing two shows. Hope you're all enjoying this. I'll have a show tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And college football is just the best. Miami. Do you remember when they went out in the offseason, they got this guy by the name of Cam Ward? You know, if you ask Washington State fans in the internet sphere, they'd tell you that Cam Ward isn't any good. And that was never my takeaway, even though Washington State did, with Cam Ward at the helm, snap a streak of, I think it was 7-8 consecutive bowl games or so that Mike Leach, RIP, started and Jake Dickert has continued. No, the take I had on Cam Ward was, you haven't seen the best of this guy yet. And Miami's getting it out of him. Shannon Dawson and Mario Cristobal are getting it out of him. Because this is not a program that's in a rebuild. They're ready to compete in the ACC. And they somehow, some way, going plus 18 in the fourth quarter against the Bears, we'll get to in a moment, find a way to win 39-38 in Berkeley. They were losing this game 35-10. It was 35-10. In the second half. This is an Atlanta Falcons versus the Patriots level collapse. This is Oregon TCU in the Alamo Bowl circa 2015. This was an epic comeback, and it's because they have Cam Ward. There's no other reason. They picked up third downs. They picked up fourth downs. He used his legs. He used his arm. He used a variety of weapons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different Canes catch a pass in the ball game en route to him getting 437 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cam Ward at Washington State was a really good but imperfect player, and in some ways it was a bad fit because Ward needs a better offensive line. Ward needs a run game. You know why? Because every quarterback needs that at some level. He never had that at Washington State. He never had a good offensive line. He never had a run game. He had inconsistent defenses. Now, this defense for Miami has not played well over the last couple of weeks. They gave up 34 points to Virginia Tech, 38 points to Cal. They came through when they needed to. But Cam Ward is the singular reason why Miami is 6-0. The singular reason why the Canes are ACC title favorites right now, though I think if they and Clemson met on a field today, it would be a really entertaining and close football game. He's really good. That's all there is to it. There's no other take here. Cam Ward is really good. Well, they just go out and buy players. Yeah, this is what it gets you. This is why you go pay top dollar. You know, Will Howard is going to be tested next week for College Game Day in Eugene when they travel to Autzen Stadium to take on the Ducks. Will Howard is fine. There was a point in time where Ohio State was interested in Cam Ward, and that never worked out. I wonder if at the end of this season we're going to look back and say, what if Cam Ward went to Ohio State? What if Cam Ward had gone insert place X, Y, or Z? You think Auburn could use a guy like Cam Ward right now? Yeah, they could. Well, Miami's got him. They sure should be very happy that they landed him because it's another thrilling comeback win. And give me the tinfoil hat crowd straight into the YouTube comments that the fix is in. The targeting call, the blah-diddy-blah-diddy-blah. And if the shoe were on the other foot, Cal, I'm sorry, you wouldn't think it was targeting probably either. And no one knows what targeting is. The most likely explanation, the Occam's razor, if you will, here, is that officials are not very good on average and make inconsistent, really incorrect calls, but 2 big-time controversial decisions have gone in favor of Miami the last couple of weeks. Them's the breaks. Them's the breaks. There might be a call this year that goes against the Hurricanes, and all you, the fixes in crowd, are going to have some tough questions to answer. But I know it's not going to quiet down. So Miami wins the game. What a football game in Berkeley. I stayed up late watching. Did you? Hope you did, because it was really fun. Cal, on the other hand, oh dear. The Calgorithm has been electric. The college game day atmosphere, magnificent. The game, sensational. The fans, awesome. And the two biggest games that Cal has had at home in the last 2 years, they've lost in heartbreaking, sloppy, disastrous fashion. Last year, they couldn't make a field goal against Auburn, cost them the game with a lot of sloppy penalties and turnovers. Here against Miami, 35-10. And they can't hold on to win. This was an opportunity for Cal to announce themselves as a top-tier team in the ACC. Instead, they blew a 35-10 lead. That's a 25-point margin. That's 4 possessions, even with 2-point conversions, in just over a quarter. Blown coverages, couldn't get off the field. Cam Ward makes some plays, and boom. Cal is left going, we're still just Cal. Little old Justin Wilcox-led Cal. Good. Show promise, but never over the hump. That's been the story of his tenure. They're a good football team. They're just not a great one. They've lost to Florida State, who stinks. I mean, stinks. FSU, is that the worst preseason top 10 team we've ever seen? I can't remember one as bad as Florida State. I mean, they're awful. They're a bad watch. They are just flat out terrible across the board, and Cal found a way to lose. And Cal was up 25-10, and they lost the football game. Sorry, 35-10, led by 25 points. That's a disastrous outcome for Cal. But Mario Cristobal's team feels like they're going to lose a game eventually, but it's all W's so far. Florida didn't do it. South Florida didn't do it. Cal didn't do it. Virginia Tech didn't do it. They play at Louisville next week. Cardinals are a little hot and bothered. I'm going to talk about them more later after a loss this week. And I tell you what, I want to see a loss on Miami's schedule this year, because I've seen them come so hilariously close and just miraculously pull a rabbit out of not one hat, but 2 hats in consecutive weeks to find a victory. But Florida State stinks. They could lose to Louisville next week. Maybe they could lose to Duke at home, or at Georgia Tech, or host Wake Forest, or at Syracuse. They could lose any of those football games. They could also win every single one of them. And the ACC teams have had their chance to beat Miami, and they haven't been able to come through in the big moments. I don't want to hear about the officials. I really don't. You blew a 25-point lead in just over a quarter. I'm sorry, Cal. That's not on the refs. How about when your punter does his due diligence, does his job, and downs the Miami Hurricanes inside their own 10-yard line? How about you don't let them flip the entire field in one play? How about that? How about you don't complain about the officials and what they did wrong and this, that, and the other thing? How about you look at, hey, we gave up 39 points at home and Cam Ward went for over 400 passing yards. Cam Ward's got an offensive line. Cam Ward's got weapons. And Cam Ward's got a football team that can win a conference championship. I don't think they can win a national championship playing like this, but they can certainly win the ACC. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Who is for real in the ACC? Not the teams you think. That's coming up next. Coming up right now, FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big, and I mean a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Did you have Cal money line? I'm so sorry. If you had Cal plus 10.5, hey, that's a hit. That's check, done, got it, put it in the bank. Do you want to make the NFL season spicier? You can do it on FanDuel. Do you want to bet the Major League Baseball playoffs? You can do it on FanDuel. Do you want to bet college football? You can do it on FanDuel. You know why? Because FanDuel's got everything you need. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Just go check them out. You won't regret it at FanDuel.com. When I said the contenders in the ACC are not who you think, what I meant was not who you thought before the season. Now, SMU is somewhere in the gray area. I thought the Mustangs would go over their win total of 7.5. Looks like they will. Pretty impressive win for SMU. Dare I say the best one. And how about that sentence before the season? Louisville's going to be in a more impressive win for SMU than Florida State. What? What are you talking about? Louisville's not as good as Florida State. Has Louisville become a top 10 team? No, Louisville's about to be out of the top 25. SMU should be inserted after this week, 34-27. Preston Stone is not the guy for SMU. And that's okay, because they have Kevin Jennings. And that's the dude who's figured out the offense. That's not a change I anticipated for Rhett Lashley and company. But SMU's 2-0 in conference play. They're 5-1 on the year. Their only loss is to BYU, who looks like a Big 12 contender. I'm going to talk about that title race coming up later, because I was very right on a couple of teams in the Big 12. Not so much on one other, but that's coming up later on today's show. Listen to SMU's schedule here, guys. At Stanford, at Duke, hosting Pitt on November 2nd. The importance of that game at this very moment cannot be overstated. You could be looking at a team that pushes for an ACC championship game berth between Pitt and SMU on November 2nd. Now, they have to continue to win. Pitt was able to do that. I'll talk about them in a moment. But Pitt plays Clemson. That's why that game is important. And Pitt, Eli Holstein at quarterback, looks like a pretty good football team. Not a lot of people were talking about Pitt coming into this year. You better be talking about them now. But SMU then plays Boston College at Virginia, and they host Cal. Very workable schedule for SMU, and they've just been impressive so far. Do you remember the first time I talked about SMU on this show, when they took the field with the ACC patch on their jerseys? They didn't look ready. You know why? They weren't ready. They didn't have their quarterback decided. But making that change has flipped the script. It's one of the most surprising quarterback moves in all of college football this year. Preston Stone was really good last season. SMU was really good. They stunk when he went out. Him going down is something you look back and go, well, maybe if they'd kept him around or kept him healthy, then they would have been, maybe they would have beaten Boston College in the bowl game. Well, turns out Preston Stone, not as good as Kevin Jennings, but Rhett Lashley has the guys cooking. It's the best team in Dallas because TCU, oh my gosh, TCU. Mess. They're a mess. But SMU's not. For all you, SMU has no brand. SMU will never be this. SMU will never do that. Should SMU even be in the ACC? They don't belong. Well, it's pretty clear they belong. Because they just beat the defending runners-up in the conference on their home field. They went into Louisville, where the Cardinals do not lose a lot of football games, and SMU walked away with a 34-27 win. That's impressive stuff by Rhett Lashley. He's doing a magnificent coaching job. Because that quarterback, I cannot overstate how difficult that is to navigate, and yet he's navigating it beautifully. And SMU, for all the talk about they're buying their way into the league, and they've never played a snap of Power 4 football, and they've never this, and they've never that, and the travel's weird, and that, sorry, SMU looks good. They house Florida State. That's what a good team does. Clemson didn't play as well against FSU this week. They still got the win. I'm impressed with SMU. Do I need to see a little more? Maybe, but I don't know how many more prove-it games there are on SMU's schedule this year. One of them is going to be Pitt, though. Oh, boy. I'd watch for SMU at Duke. That's a game where they could stumble. Duke lost for the first time. Georgia Tech 24-14. Eli Holstein is a quarterback who, outside of the ACC, probably doesn't have a lot of name brand recognition. Well, here is the Pitt schedule so far. Their preseason win total was 4.5, by the way. They've gone over that already. Kent State, 55-24. Cincinnati trailed by 3 possessions, won 28-27 on the road. West Virginia win 38-34. Youngstown State, 73-17. And then North Carolina, who I tried to tell you wasn't any good this year, and lo and behold, they are not. I know they've had quarterback injuries. I'm telling you, I don't think it would have mattered a whole heck of a lot. North Carolina is not a very good football team. Heck, North Carolina is grateful they're not sub 500 right now. If Minnesota makes a field goal at the end of regulation several weeks ago, then the Tar Heels are 2-14, but alas, they're 3-3. And Pitt goes into Chapel Hill, wins 34-24. That's an impressive win. Not because I think North Carolina is a great team, but because Pitt has shown an ability to win on the road. They can win at home. Their defense has played well. At times, I think it can improve a bit, but the offense has been there. And Eli Holstein has been at the center of it. 25 of 42, 381 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. By the way, for anyone saying, well, North Carolina just needed a quarterback, how much better would Max Johnson be than what Jacoby Criswell did today against the Panthers? 24 45, 269, and a touchdown. Do you think Max Johnson is a lot better than that? Because I don't. North Carolina, just not very good. Pitt, on the other hand, could be. Now, they've only played one conference game, so they have a long way to go to truly prove themselves an ACC title contender. They play Cal at home this week, who are probably going to be emotionally drained after the most disappointing game of the Justin Wilcox era to date. I mean, you talk about an opportunity to announce your arrival into a new conference that is just bypassed, thrown away, tossed in the trash, discarded by the California Golden Bears. There it was. There it was, that one right there. You threw that away because you had a 35-10 lead, couldn't hang on. Cal and Syracuse at home next week. You beat those two teams. Those are solid, not elite, but those are solid ACC teams. If Pitt is for real to push for a conference championship appearance this year, they will beat Cal and Syracuse and set up a showdown with SMU, and then things can get interesting. Things can get really interesting because then Pitt plays Virginia, who went on a 24-0 run against Boston College, by the way. Didn't see that one coming. Shout out to the Cavaliers. That was impressive. Pitt's got Clemson at home. Then Louisville, Boston College on the road. By ACC standards, it's a pretty tough schedule. But by Pitt standards so far, so good. I'm not jumping out over my skis, but I'm putting my feet in the skis and getting ready to load up and go down the mountain. But am I taking off yet? Not yet. Not just yet. ACC is a very open league. I still see Miami, Clemson, Gap, and then everybody else. But that everybody else, pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating. And I tell you what, is there a league as interesting as the Big 12? That's coming up next. But a final thought here on the ACC. It's curious that Pitt has played one conference game at this point. Georgia Tech has played 4. I don't understand anything about that. 1 versus 4? Lots to be decided. Brent Key's team got a nice win against Duke. They covered the 9 points. Malik Murphy suffers his first loss as Duke quarterback. Did I ever think Duke was for real? No. A little bit of more of a fraudulent 5-0 than a legit 5-0. Pitt, I'm in wait-and-see mode as a 5-0 football team, but only 2 unbeatens left for overall record in the ACC. Miami and the Pittsburgh Panthers. Going to talk about them plenty coming up next week. Coming up next, got to talk about the Big 12. Boy, I nailed a lot of things in the Big 12 this week. Probably my best week pick in the Big 12, if you ignore UCF. That's all coming up next. What's happening in this league? I don't know. I do know you should check out Game Time, which has a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for. You get seat views, a panoramic view of your seat from your seat in the app before you buy. You know what to expect. Game Time, they've also got their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will indeed credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out, not in, out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Do you know what time it is? I do. It's game time. Oh, what a day in the Big 12. What a crazy day in the Big 12. I saw most of it coming, though not all of it exactly. So let's start with, to take a page out of Colin Cowherd's book, Where Spencer Was Right. And that's Texas Tech, 3-0 in the Big 12. Remember when the Red Raiders went up to Pullman and got blasted by Washington State? Remember when the week prior, Abilene Christian had a 2-point conversion to upset them on their home field? Well, you should forget about those games because that's not what this current version of Texas Tech is. So they had a 15-point lead at the half. Arizona stages a comeback, and Brent Brennan's team comes up just short. Now, Arizona fans didn't really like what I had to say about the Wildcats coming into this season, thought that I was overlooking them and just a hater. I don't know why I hate Arizona, but okay. Here we are, and the Wildcats are 3-2, 1-1 in the Big 12, and there are other losses to a Big 12 team, just not a Big 12 game, and that was a 31-7 blasting against Kansas State. Arizona goes at BYU this week. If you would like to go to the Big 12 championship game, Arizona, you better win that one. However, Texas Tech, Now, who listed Texas Tech as a dark horse team to win the Big 12 this year? That's right. I did. Didn't pick them to the Big 12 championship game, but said, hey, watch out for the Red Raiders. Schedule's not horrifically bad. And I think this is a pretty good team, like the transfer portal, like the quarterback, like the coach. Hey, what do you know? Arizona State, Cincinnati, Arizona have all succumbed to the mighty strength of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Taj Brooks fumbles twice in this game in the second half. Does not matter. He finds a way to get the game-winning touchdown, and boom! Texas Tech 5-1, 3-0. They host Baylor next week. 2 weeks from today, or from this week. October 19th. They're going to be at home off a bye against Baylor. I got news for you. If you didn't know, Baylor stinks. Baylor stinks. You know who doesn't stink? Iowa State. Iowa State. I'm legitimately wondering if Iowa State and Texas Tech are the best teams in the Big 12. You peruse the conference standings, and they're up there with West Virginia. They're up there with Colorado. They're up there with BYU. I have far more questions about those teams than I do with Iowa State and Texas Tech. You know what Tech's problem was? They couldn't play defense. Well, they gave up 22 points on the road against Arizona. That dynamic tandem of Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan, showing again you need more than two guys to be a championship caliber football team. I think that's what's going to happen to Colorado eventually. Is you need more than two guys to be a really, good football team to win a conference. Texas Tech is a more complete football team than Arizona. I think they're a more complete football team than Colorado. They play Colorado at home November 9th. I think the Red Raiders are going to win, but that's a long ways away right now. This league is so incredibly wide open, and I thought that coming into the year, that it'd be the most open league, but it's become even more crazy chaos ball in the Big 12. Why? Because Cam Rising can't get onto the football field and stay there. If he could, Utah'd still be my favorite. Utah'd still probably be unbeaten. And yet, he can't. So we don't live in the hypothetical world. We live in the real world. And the real world is that Cam Rising isn't playing for Utah at quarterback. I have no confidence that even if he does come back at some point, he's going to be able to keep himself healthy for the rest of the year. If he does, sure, the Utes could win out, go 11-1 and only have one conference loss, make it to the Big 12 championship game. But right now, I don't feel confident in that. I don't feel confident that Jake Retzlaff can get you to the Big 12 championship game. I don't feel confident that Colorado has improved enough, though they have improved, despite everybody telling me how wrong I was about that. They're clearly a better football team. Duh. Colorado has still got some shortcomings. The offensive line, problem. Big problem. Well, when you face that BYU defense, or if you face that BYU defense, do Colorado and BYU play? No, I don't think they do. In fact, they do not. But Colorado does take on Texas Tech next week in what is going to be just a chef's kiss of a Big 12 showdown there. When you face a defensive line that can harass Shedeur Sanders, it'll look like Nebraska. But when you don't face that sort of team, it could look like UCF. Colorado's interesting. Very, very interesting. West Virginia quietly at 2-0. Speaking of things I was right about, before I go to a couple teams I was a little bit wrong about, coming into this season. Tried to tell you Oklahoma State wasn't a legit conference title contender. Oh, look, they're 0-3 in conference play. Who's shocked? Not me. Not me. I've picked them to lose every single one of those Big 12 games. And here we are. Oklahoma State, one of the few teams I am perfect picking in the straight-up department so far this season here on the show. I believe I picked them to squeak by Arkansas, Tulsa, South Dakota State, no problems there, and 3 straight losses. Yeah, that makes it pretty simple for Mike Gundy and company because, their season is, for all intents and purposes, over now. You're not going to the Big 12 championship game at 0-3, and Oklahoma State hasn't lost their final game of the season. Anyway, speaking of 0-3 teams, here's one where I can't take a victory lap. I have to take a L on the forehead here. That's Kansas. I picked Kansas to go into Arizona State and win. They had a lead with 2 minutes to go. Couldn't get a stop. I had Kansas. I put faith in Kansas. I picked them to win 10 games this year. Whoopsie daisies. Chalk that up as swinging a whiff for Spencer's picks here on Locked On College Football. Kansas is back to being Kansas. This was supposed to be different, and it's not. At least not for this year. I don't think Lance Leipold will come back with another 3-4 win season next year, which is what Kansas is bound for this season, but they just can't win a close game. Here are their losses, which are 5 in a row, by the way. 6 points, 3 points, 4 points, 11 points, 4 points. 35-31, Arizona State gets the win. Thought this was the moment where Kansas could try to turn it around, but they're done. Not going to the Big 12 championship game. I and others, Drake Toll, Joel Klatt, picked them to do such a thing, and they did not. They did not. They could not, and they shall not make the Big 12 championship game. Arizona State, though. I have loved the Kenny Dillingham hire from the moment that it was first announced. I think he approaches it with the right attitude. I think he cares about the school. I think he's a good coach. I think he's a really good coach. He's getting the best out of Sam Leavitt, who came over from Michigan State. People forget that was a blue chip quarterback recruit. And what do you know? He's playing like one. Had a heck of a game. I mean a heck of a football game. Jalen Daniels did not. He didn't have an interception. Yay, I guess. This is more about the Kansas defense, of course. Sam Leavitt, 14-24, 157 yards. What if I told you he threw for 4 touchdowns? What if I told you that he marched Arizona State down the field, and then Cam Scadaboo is, very good at running the football and not getting tackled. But Sam Leavitt is doing a really solid job, and Kenny Dillingham, he's bringing that juice to Tempe. This was an over bet for me before the season with regards to their preseason win total. It was 4.5. I said, I think I'd lead the over there. Like 4.5 felt like the right number. Arizona State's going over that number. And I don't think they're a conference title contender, but they're taking this sort of year 2 leap under Kenny Dillingham that every program would want their new head coach to make when you're trying to rebuild. Well, they've got Utah at home next week. If Cam Rising doesn't play, you can win that football game straight up. If Cam Rising does play, he'll probably lose. But look at how many games they can still win. At Cincinnati, at Oklahoma State, you can win those games. Host UCF, you can win that game. At Kansas State, why can't you win that game? Well, Kansas State's really good and they're at home. Host BYU, that's tough, but doable. At Arizona, that duel in the desert, boy, before the year. Who at Arizona State is being able to beat Arizona? Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils did. Maybe nobody else. He might have been right. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.